And I drank hers, and I was like, it's good, but it's just so coffee to me. So I'm like, I like some coffee with the blender. Diabetes. Look, I want my coffee lighter than this in the winter. Well, that's what coffee in the winter. Yeah. And then she brings it out. And I was like, okay. But when she brings it out, I was like, drink. And she's like, what do you think? And I was like, oh,
You take my wallet.
I basically want diabetes in a cup. And he was laughing. He's drenched in sweat. I mean, so
Better take my wallet.
and it really did not. They walk out with their iPads and do the thing. So
I know, I need
Wow,
I parked on the side street. Last car off.
yes.
That's when I just drove. I was like, it's gonna take forever. It didn't. It went so quick. That's when I just drove on.
We got that at like 11:40.
It's not worth it. That's Lori's time. Wait till we get our
I had the same problem.
You just gotta tell us to shut up.
It's all right, I wait on Carrie.
I did that, what, 2 minutes?
What's that?
Don't, he told me to shut up 2 minutes ago. He doesn't matter. I said, Hunter's still talking. You were talking at the time. I did. He was still, I know, he would. You were talking.
To quote another one of my friends named Carrie, the legendary Carrie Robinson, said, you ain't gotta be scared to get whipped. I threatened our minister. I said, Randy, you ain't gotta be scared to get whipped. He goes, no, but it helps. So, most of the time when you think about couples, you know, they want to know, and anything that John Gottman has written, I highly recommend. Gottman, Gottman. He wrote Why Marriages Succeed or Fail, 7 Principles for Strengthening Marriages, The Relationship Cure, The Science of Trust. A lot of his stuff will repeat because he builds on these theories. Really, really good stuff by Gottman. I like Michelle Davis. She has a book called Divorce Busting. She also has a TED Talk on the sex-starved marriage, which is a pretty good book. Divorce Busting is probably my favorite of hers. And then there's some online resources. There's a group out of Nashville. Theologically, they're a little to the left of where I'd like to be. But a guy named Joe Beam used to be a very popular speaker in our fellowship. And he has a company called Marriage Helper. And they've got some online resources that are free. And they've got some pay-to-play resources. And then they offer a 3-day intensive. If you're an elder, a deacon, minister, and you run into a couple and they are in crisis, divorce is imminent, then rather than try to get them into a counselor and work for 6 months, which they're not going to do, a 3-day intensive is well worth the money. And Joe has a good program. It's called Marriage Helper. And like I say, some of the theology is a little left of where I would like to be, but as far as his actual stuff he applies to couples, uses a lot of the Gottman principles in different things. But one of the things that you talk about is couples, you know, is there a predictor for marriages staying together or marriages failing? Gottman says that he can sit in a room with a couple, listen to them conflict, talk about a difficult thing, and in 10 minutes predict divorce with 95% accuracy. And so that's, and when I first started, I hated to do marriage work. I have a specialty in trauma. I really like to do trauma. I'm trained in EMDR. I do some trauma-informed hypnotherapy. I've done some rapid resolution therapy. I do a lot of work with, first responders. And I work with SWAT guys. And so a lot of the stuff that I deal with as a police chaplain, it's the scene of whatever. And really, really like to do trauma work. Hey, do marriage work. Because couples come in and she want to tell on him, he want to tell on her. And I was like, I'm not the principal's office. I don't want you telling on each other. And it was hard. I didn't like to do it. And then when I discovered some of the Gottman material, I really, really enjoyed working with couples. because I do a thing called didactic therapy when I work with couples. Didactic is a word that means teaching. So if you've got to come in and you find it therapeutically relevant to take your garbage can and dump it, I mean, I'll let you do it at my hourly rate. I mean, I can tolerate anything. But if you'll let me talk first and do some teaching, about 80% of the couples that come in, when we talk about these things, they go, hey, you've described what's going on with us while we're not working. And which saves a lot of time. And there are some things with regrettable events, they're in the past. You're not going to solve them by talking about them. They happened. They're not going to unhappen. But that has a lot to do with trauma and forgiveness. And we can talk about that some. But the 4 things that you need to look for, and this is Gottman's 4 horsemen of the relationship apocalypse. And sometimes we want to call that withdrawal. And so we'll look at this first one for sure is not just that it's there, it's the perception and the presence or the absence of contempt. So what do we mean by contempt? There's a sign on your face. There's a really cool study. This guy did body language study and did all this encoding about the way people's faces work. Could you tell when somebody was smiling at you when they were wearing a COVID mask? Why? You smile with your eyes. If you ever get an asymmetrical look on somebody's face, they're being disingenuous. A guy approaches you in the park and his eyes aren't smiling, but his mouth, now I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. Put 2 rounds in him, okay? Or 1 if you have a man gun. Anyway, but you can tell those things. If you smile, and only smile with this side of your face, it's called the dimpler muscle. Watch the first fight between Frank Mir and Brock Lesnar. Frank Mir catches Lesnar in a knee bar, which is, big guys don't think about protecting their legs. And, I wrestle with a kid every Tuesday named Cooper Houghton. He's 6'4" and weighs 325. And he's a sucker for an outside heel hook. I mean, it's all there is to it. But he knee bars Lesnar and walks around the ring with this dimpler muscle. You may not be able to see it because of my whiskers. If you sit in a room with a man and a woman and she does that, X number of times in an hour, I can predict heart disease in the man. So when Solomon says, it's better to live in a house on the roof by yourself than with a contemptuous woman. And that's probably pretty true. So contempt is basically the idea of when I approach you and I'm unhappy about something, did I talk about the problem or did I talk about the person? Okay? This is, I like this example. It's not exactly apples to apples, but look at Judges 12. The men of Ephraim gathered together, they crossed over towards Zaphon, and they said to Jephthah, why did you cross over to fight the people of Ammon and did not call us to go with you? So what does it sound like they're saying?
They're accusing.
They're very accusing, but why are they accusing you? You left us out. We were willing to do what? And do what? Fight with you. Okay. Hey, why did you do that and go fight? You didn't call us. We're going to burn your house down. Wait, what? You're telling me, with friends like this, who needs enemies, right? You got this mixed message. Why didn't you call us? We went with you, and since you didn't call us, we're just going to move to fight. We're going to burn your house down. Classic misunderstanding. Jephthah said to them, my people and I were in great struggle with the people of Ammon, and when I called you, you did not deliver me out of their hands. Hey, why didn't you call us? We'll burn your house down. I did call you, and you didn't come. Who's right? Who's wrong? So it basically is about perception. And one of the keys in communication is, and sometimes I do this with handouts, I draw these two things like two little cylinders and look at each other. And then I draw two circles. Well, that's taking those cylinders and turning them this way. Your goal as a couple in communication is what we call attunement. It's not understand me, no, understand me, no, understand me. It's let me demonstrate that I can understand you. And we typically don't do that. We don't let people know that I can see the world from your perspective. Now, I don't have to agree with your perspective. I don't have to think it's reasonable. I don't have to think it's rational. I just get to demonstrate that I get what you're seeing and what you're feeling. We tend to be, with our children and with our spouses, we tend to be emotion dismissing. We tend to be emotion denying. You don't feel that way. You're not really mad. You're not really hurt. How could you be upset about that? Or emotion disapproving. You shouldn't feel that way about this. Well, they're your feelings. You feel what you feel. And I should allow you to feel those things. In the crisis intervention stuff that we teach with the cops, you get somebody in a mental illness crisis. Well, you shouldn't send cops to people in a mental illness crisis, okay? But when you get into a mental illness crisis and it's 2:30 in the morning, you don't call your therapist. A, your therapist won't answer. B, if he does, it's expensive. So what does it cost to dial 911? Not a dime, it's free. So I dial 911 because there's a schizophrenic person acting up in my house. 911 has three opportunities. They can send the kid with a fire hose, your local firefighter. They can send a young person with a box of Band-Aids, your paramedic. Or they can send a kid with a badge and a gun. Guess who they send? Now, a badge and a gun shows up, there's implied force. I'm scared and I can't make them. Guess what cops are good at? Not being scared and making fools. We got 9 cadets at the academy right now, and we teach ask, tell, make. Excuse me, sir, I need to see your hands. He can show me his hands. I said, show me your hands. It doesn't work. We're going to the ground, and your hands are coming out of your pockets, and I'm going to have them locked together behind your back so I can look at them all I want to. The ship has sailed. I'm going to look at your hands. It's not, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to make you. And so somebody's scared, somebody's afraid, and they call this young cop, and he shows up. And there's a person in a mental health crisis. You got a guy standing in Walmart throwing green beans at a dragon. Well, the cop shows up and says, hey, what's going on here? I'm throwing green beans at this dragon. There's not a dragon there, you fool. How do you think that's going to work? Well, go ahead and get your taser or your spray or your stick out because you're going to fight this guy. Or you go in, hey, what's going on here? I'm throwing green beans at this dragon. Oh, a big red one. Oh, there's 2 of them. You don't want to do that. You don't enter in that delusion with them. You simply say, sir, I can't see the dragon. But I bet if you see it, it scares you to death. And he says, yes. And it's just about saying, I see the world the way you said. Hey, you didn't call me to help you. Yeah, I did call you. You wouldn't come. And now there's this big fight. So they're not sharing perceptions. They're not sharing perspective. They're not demonstrating understanding. And so there's this fight. Now here's the cool thing. So when I saw that you would not deliver me, I took my life in my own hands and I crossed over the people of Ammon, and the Lord delivered them in my hand. Why then have you come up to fight against me? Hey, I've taken care of business. The war's over. I don't have any enemies, and now you're being my enemy. Why are you here to fight with me? Now Jephthah gathered all together the people of Gilead, and they fought against Ephraim, and the men of Gilead defeated Ephraim because they said, you Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim among the Ephraimites and among the Manassites. I have no idea what that means to a Hebrew. If you've got Jewish friends and you want to talk smack to them, drop it on and see what they do. I have no idea what this insult means, but it is. So now they're fighting, and the Gileadites seized the fords of the Jordan before the Ephraimites arrived. And when any Ephraimite who escaped said, let me cross over, the men of Gilead would say, are you an Ephraimite? And if he said no, then they would say to him, then say the word Shibboleth. And he would say, Sibboleth, because he could not pronounce it right, and they would take him and kill him in the fords of the Jordan, and there fell that time 42,000 Ephraimites. So you got these guys, they're having this battle and they're losing, so they're going to run. Well, these guys beat them to the low place in the river where you can cross, and that's the fords of the Jordan. So this guy comes across. Hey, are you from Ephraim? Nope. Say Shibboleth. Sibboleth. And kill him right there. I worship at a church in Meridianville, Alabama. By the simple way that I pronounce it, you know I'm not from there. Where are you from, Meridian? So I goes, I'm from Meridianville. No, you're not. Because they could tell by the way these guys said that where they were from. I don't know if it's a Southern Israel thing or what. Contempt is not what you say, but how you say it. And that has a lot to do with several things. Not what you say, but how you say it. And I like to basically say, when you make any request, it is a positive request to have your needs met. If you're unhappy with your spouse about something and you say something and it's about them rather than your needs, you're not starting a conversation, you're starting a confrontation. I've got a friend who used to be a magician at Disney, had this really huge stage prop. It was called The Pop-Up Book of Phobias. What could go wrong? So you got a person who's scared of stuff. When you open the book, they pop out at you. Well, I've got another scenario. I'm self-employed, own my own business. Only guy there. I'm the boss. I'm the chief cook. I'm the bottle washer. I like to deer hunt. Anybody see a problem with that? My boss is easy to lie to. Yeah, I set my own schedule. I can hunt. One of the places I hunt is 2.5 miles from my house. The guy says, hey, I need you to kill 20 does off my property this year. I can hunt every day before I go to work. I can hunt every day on my way home from work. So my wife gets tired of waking up after daylight with me not there. She gets tired of eating supper with me not there. And I come in the house and she says, you're never home. Now all I've got to do is say, I'm home right now. I win the argument. Because never. I can do is find one exception. But if she says you're never home, what happens to me? I was home last night. I was home yesterday. I'm home every Friday when it's not deer season. All I've got to do is come up with the one exception. But if she says you're never home, it leads me into trying to protect what I'm doing. Or she could simply say, I wish we spent more time together. Now, are we discussing the same thing? Hey, Jones is gone too much. You're never home is a confrontation. I wish we spent more time together is a request to have her needs met, and it's done in a positive way. So if you're conflicting at your house, ask yourself, does it seem like I'm attacking the person or am I talking about the problem? Now the interesting thing is, contempt can be real or it can be perceived. And it's kind of strange how we're sensitive to that. If you ever thrown a baseball in the backyard with somebody, throwing the ball back and forth, and all of a sudden somebody puts a little heat on the ball. Quack! How do you respond to that? Wow! So that's what we're doing, huh? And then when you throw it back, did they get the message, hey, slow down? What do they do? Yeah. And it's like Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny. I've got a bat, I've got a gun, I've got a rocket, I've got a missile. You know, just escalates. All you got to do to change that pace is ask yourself, hey, you know what? Am I sending a signal that I want things to get better or get worse? And sometimes if you're throwing a ball to me in the backyard and I don't catch it in the pocket of my glove, but I catch it here, it hurts me and you didn't mean to. You didn't know you threw it. I just took it wrong. I caught it wrong. So I try to get couples to think about, hey, watch out how you say things. This house is a mess. I'm less stressed when our house is more organized. It makes me nervous when we don't meet our budget. It scares me when you spend this much time talking to this person. So it's the idea of making a positive request to have my needs met. Now, 10 years ago, I would sit down with a couple and say, listen, you got to change the way you're asking this. You got to change the way you're wording this. In the last 5 years, I've decided this sword cuts both ways. I don't care how you say it. Your words only have the power I give them. As a word user, you should be careful how you talk. Do not let any corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, except what is good for necessary edification, that may impart grace to the hearer. Get rid of all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor. Be ye kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another. Ephesians 4. I mean, as a word user, that's what I've got to do. But when you don't use your words properly, rather than reacting to that, you're never home. Let me run that through a filter and see if I can take the bitterness and the wrath and the anger and the fear and see if I can sift it out till I find a need. Regardless of what she said, regardless of how she said it, did her need change? So she should say it different, I should say it different, but even if I don't, even though it's said the wrong way, I'm looking for the need. And sometimes when people are angry, they're insecure. When men act aggressive, they're afraid, by the way, 9 times out of 10. A guy who's a tough guy will just fight you. He starts posturing and beating his chest and flexing his muscles. He's scared. Okay, guys who punch you will punch you. Dogs who bite. Dogs who don't bite, bark. Okay, that dog wants you to think he's mean. He's just telling you he's scared. So when you're telling me these things and you're growling and you're angry, I need to look at this person needs security. This person needs comfort. This person needs something. And so not only am I supposed to ask it different, I'm supposed to hear it different. So you look at your relationship, hey, we're unhappy about something, and I say this, it's not just what I say, but how I say it. I think it's also not just what you say, but why you say it. And I think it's really, really important to understand, especially, it's not what you say, but when you say it. But if contempt enters the picture, the next thing that happens is, when contempt happens, and I either perceive it or it's actually there, and I react to it, and I get defensive. Now, what happens when you get defensive about something?
You get worked up even more, and then you get to where you don't even understand what's being said past that point too.
When your heart goes above 100 beats a minute, you're in this part of your brain, not this part of your brain. In this part of your brain, you don't process logic, you don't process humor, you tunnel vision on the threat. And then if I'm wrong, but you attack me, and I give you minimization, denial, or blame, I'm not trying to win. I'm not trying to solve the problem. I'm trying to win an argument. I'm playing this stupid little competition. Now, when you enter into competition, that's what we call a zero-sum game. Now, what's a zero-sum game?
Nobody wins.
Yeah, somebody wins. But in order for me to win, you're going to lose. In order for me to be right, you got to be wrong. In order for me to be happy, you got to be sad. So I'm playing this game where I've got to have all the marbles, I got to have all the checkers, I got to have all the money, I got to buy all the property, right? And so we're playing this game, and I'm right, you're wrong, I win, you lose, I'm happy, you're sad. In order to play that, what's my default, way, way down below subliminal setting got to be? Okay, but in order to be defensive and only think about me and not about you, what's that default setting? Oh, I got to be selfish. Well, why don't we ever resolve anything when we fight? Because the person I'm fighting with is selfish, and I don't trust them. And because I don't trust them, we're not really feel close. I'm not going to choose this about you at all. And so it doesn't matter what you're fighting about. You left your socks on the floor, or you've got a person hidden in the closet. When this comes out as contempt, and this person responds with defensiveness, minimization, denial, or blame, you're sending a subliminal signal. I'm being selfish, don't trust me. Well, now, since I'm arguing with a person, since I'm fighting with a person, since I'm in a life or death struggle, I'm defensive with a person, I got to change the way I think about you. So you don't take a young man and teach him to be a soldier and say, I'm going to send you to Afghanistan. When you get there, you're going to kill uncles, brothers, dads, cousins, and sons. Read Dave Grossman's book on killing. You depersonalize that person. I'm going to send you to Afghanistan. You're going to kill Sammy, Skinnies, and Ragheads. You're going to kill Charlie, Victors, and vampires. You're going to kill bogeys in your airplane. You know why? You depersonalize them. I killed all of them. We've got 9 cadets in the police academy that go to the range. There'll be a paper target that loosely looks like a human. It's a silhouette. And they will yell, threat! They never yell, ready, aim, shoot the person. They just yell threat. And so when he's out there on the street and the back part of his brain yells threat, that gun will come up automatically. It's a practice reaction thing, and it'll be done without a thought. I don't know how many guys I've sat down and said, hey, you know what? He became a silhouette target. I could see an X on him. Wow, that's interesting. But we condition them to do that. Because once I decide that you're not a person, you're not my lover, you're not my best friend, you're not the person I'm bonded to, you're not my soulmate, you're the witch, you're the ogre, you're the nag, you're the whatever. Once we start viewing the person in these negative terms, what happens then is you get negative sentiment override. And so the backdrop of the story of us is you always, and you never. You sit down with a couple and say, hey, think back to a time when you were happy. And she says, we've had trouble so long, I can't ever remember being happy. And wait a minute, you married a person that's never made you happy. Right? And you rented a venue, you had special made dresses for all your friends that they looked bad in on purpose, I think. And then you stood in front of a minister and you played this song that you didn't realize how long it was going to be just standing there looking at each other and how uncomfortable it would be. And then in front of this minister you said, I'm going to do everything I can to make you miserable till one of us dies. That's not how I remember that, right? You're standing there all cow-eyed looking at each other. And there's a time when you were happy. But now in my thinking, we've never been happy. You've always been this way. You'll always be there. And then once I start thinking in terms of negativity, I'm not worried about fixing anything. This thing's broken, it'll never be fixed. And you know what? Since it can't be fixed, guess what I'm going to do? Fine. You win. I'm giving up. I'm giving in. And that stonewalling creates a barrier that marriages don't survive. If you'll come to my office and you'll fight and get on the floor and I'll have to get between you, I'd probably help your marriage. But if you come in there and one of you is numb, I don't care. I'm not willing to go through it again. We get on this cycle. I'm not getting on that cycle again. I just don't have the energy to fight about it. Fine, whatever you say. When that happens, it's almost impossible to save that marriage. But it starts with the absence or the presence of contempt. And if I can filter through your contempt, give you permission to be angry, give you permission to be hurt, give you permission to have your feelings hurt and not minimize your feelings. Don't be dismissing, don't be denying, and don't be disapproving. And then kind of find out, hey, what can I do to fix this? What did I do? I'm not going to be minimization, denial, or blame. I'm going to quit making it some silly competition where I'm trying to win. I'm going to address your needs. And once I try to meet your needs, I'm doing this intentional stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that's negative. But you know, it's not all negative. Or it hasn't always been negative. If you didn't have any celebrations, affection, positivity, harmony, satisfaction, or us, and got married anyway, again, I can't fix that. But it never starts out here. It always degrades to there, or we decide that we're going to let one regret, one resentment, one negativity, one disappointment, we let that be the only thing we measure a relationship with. Does that make sense? And so if I can get into this, okay, so I'm going to make my request a positive need to have my needs met, and then I can listen to that in you, and then instead of trying to defend it, I'm just going to initiate good. I'm going to treat you as if, and I'm going to treat you even though. And then once I do that, I'm not being selfish. You trust me, we build intimacy. That's the formula for dealing with conflict. But it's basically an understanding what the other person is hurting about. And that comes with the idea of attunement. Two of the most theologically significant passages in Scripture is John 1:14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. What does it mean? Why is that theologically significant?
Christ.
Christ. Because what did Christ do?
Gave it up.
He left godness, and that word became flesh and dwelt among us. That word is tabernacled, which is fun to say, by the way. But what's a tabernacle? And we talk about the tabernacle in the Old Testament. because it's a fancy word we see in the King James Version. It means tent. And the Word became flesh and tented among us. God wore a tent. God camped. You know the difference in camping in your house? Lots of things that were convenient over here aren't present here. God lived in a place where he could see the world from our perspective. And in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 11, we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted like as we are. In order to fix the most incompatible relationship that existed, deity versus people, you know how God fixed that? He viewed it from our perspective. Now that's how God fixed the gap between me and him. Guess what I do to fix the gap between me and you? Guess what I do to fix the gap between me and my wife? And to a certain extent, that's how you fix the gap between you and your kids. Because when our kids come up and they're upset, we tell them they shouldn't be upset, they shouldn't feel what they feel, first of all, let me understand what happened to you. What does it mean to you? Oh, this happened and you feel this way. And the minute you start talking that way to your spouse or your kid, and they go, yes, I'm hurt. Yes, I'm scared. Yes, it was unfair. Yes, I'm angry. You're now on the same side of them. You're seeing the world through their perspective. And then you can make a repair attempt. You can do something that helps them deal with their problems. But before that happens, we tell them their emotions don't matter. We don't care about their emotions, and their emotions are stupid, their emotions are sinful, and they shouldn't do it. Well, guess what happens when I tell you that I didn't hear you, I don't understand you, and I reject you? How many more deep conversations are we going to have? And then at some point, if I haven't been heard, understood, and accepted, I'm going to find somebody who will hear me, who will understand me, and who will accept me. And that's how affairs start. Affairs don't start because somebody's inflamed with lust and dive into bed with somebody. Affairs start because somebody that you were buying coffee from every morning says, so how's your family? What's going on with your kids? I'm frustrated at work today. You should grow up and tell me about being frustrated at work. Bartenders, ministers, lawyers, and therapists have affairs. You know why? They listen to people. They don't tell you what you should think or shouldn't think. They just find out how you think. And so rather than being unheard, misunderstood, and rejected, we want our spouses to feel heard, understood, and accepted. This is the need. Once I start focusing on this is the need you're trying to prove, and I ask you about, hey, is this what you're asking for? And they say, yes, you've gone from this to this. And that's a healing moment. Does that make sense? And so when you get down to this stonewalling, this usually happens either because this is present or you have a regretful event. And then when you try a repair attempt, you can turn toward people, you can turn away from people, or you can turn against people in a repair attempt. So I'm an imperfect person, and I live up to my potential for imperfection. And then I approach you about it. You can just shut me down and say, this happens every time. Or you can turn against it and go, I'm not going to let you do this to me again. Or you can turn toward it. I grew up in Oxford, Alabama, right down the road there. Interestingly enough, Oxford was originally called Lickskillet. And there's a place you can cross Snow's Creek at Lickskillet. It was called the Ox Ford at Lickskillet. And so let's go to the Ox Ford at Lickskillet. We finally dropped the Lickskillet, let's go to the Ox Ford, and now it's just Oxford. We ran it together. But I grew up in Oxford, Alabama. I'm Oxford educated. But it's Oxford, Alabama. All right. My wife grew up in Ball Knob, Arkansas. And she's from a little town called Velvet Ridge, which is way more romantic. I met her in Velvet Ridge, Arkansas. I don't like to tell people she's from Ball Knob, but like it was prophetic. Anyway, I don't know how they teach math in Arkansas. What?
For the toothbrush.
Yes. I don't know how they teach, but my wife has this mathematical theory that if something costs $500 and she can buy it for $3, we have saved $200.
No, that's girl math.
Girl math.
Okay, so in Oxford, Alabama, there's a number line.
Girl math.
It starts here, goes 1, 2, 3, 4, -1, -2, -3, -4, and we had a little algebra teacher from up north. She had a doctorate from MIT, and she'd stand on the number line. And if I move forward 3 digits, positive integers, or I can move backwards negative integers. And she told us how to do positive and negative. If you're standing here, and 3 Benjamins walk out of my life, you ain't saving no money. I don't care what you call that. Those guys left and they ain't coming back. Okay? You didn't know, oh, I could have been over here, but I went here. No, you went here, and Ben is gone. And took 2 of his friends with him, 2 of his twin brothers. He's not coming home. That's the way math works, ladies. Okay? That's it. So Jackie comes home and announces, look at this thing I got. I saved you $200 by spending 3. And my head tries to explode. And I tell her, what? You just killed 3 Benjamins. I don't know, whatever. Well, I realize I'm wrong. She did save me money. Because she could have spent more. She didn't, so technically maybe. So I go to her and say, honey, last night you told me you saved me some money by spending $300. And I overreacted. My wheels got in the ditch. And she can say, you know what, you always micromanage our money. And I retired from the city hospital. They send me a check every month. I spend what I want to. Have we made any progress there? Hey, honey, you saved me some money last night. I didn't appreciate it. I didn't understand. I got upset about it. I understand that you're self-employed and you're worried about retirement. We're trying to do the Dave Ramsey thing, and I realize that made you upset. You see how, whether I'm right or wrong, she turns toward me, not away from me, not against me. And that's the reason our complaints don't work, and that's the reason our apologies don't work. Because we're not doing those things. So real quick, go to Philippians chapter 2. And Paul gives some, with this kind of in mind, Paul gives some rules of engagement. By the way, 1 Corinthians 13, some good rules of engagement too. But this is more succinct. In this little bitty section, there's prescriptions and there's proscriptions. Things that you don't do and things that you do. So here's what, and this is not written about marriages. This is written to a bunch of people who go to church together. It's written to a bunch of people who go to church together that Paul probably spent less than 21 days with. And one of the nights he spent with him, he was in jail after they beat him. So they've got a really unique relationship here. And so here's what Paul writes to these people. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. Let nothing, that's a big word there. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each of you esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interest, but also for the interest of others. So Paul says, nothing you do can be done out of selfishness. And I have come to believe that if I could speak one time on one topic to one audience, I'd preach on selfishness. Selfishness is the common denominator behind all sin. James says you're tempted by the things that you want. And it's not what you want, but that you have the capacity to want. And your wants get weaponized against you. We're tempted by the things that we want. When the things that we want create temptation, temptation gives birth to sin, and sin when it's full grown gives birth to death. And that word gives birth to death is actually an imagery of a stillborn. It's not a viable offspring. So the common denominator behind all sin is I'm selfish. It's when my wants get weaponized against me. Now, just think about with this model, I'm not being selfish in my wants. Well, first of all, if I'm not selfish in my wants, what happens between me and God? Not my will, but your will. Well, if I cannot be selfish in the other aspects of my life, what happens to those? There's no place for competition. There's no place for strife. My sin, and I'm I'm a sinner. I need a Savior. That's why I will be in church tomorrow. My sin is irrelevant. It's the personal manifestation of selfishness in my life. And your sin, whatever it is, I don't have to know. It's just when I see it, I'll know that's the personal manifestation of selfishness in your life. That's why all sin is essentially the same in the eyes of God. I'm choosing me over you. I'm choosing me over God. It's interesting that when Jesus says, hey, you really want to understand the law? Love God, love your neighbor. Because if I love God and I love my neighbor, what happens to selfishness? It's gone. Selfishness, I think, is the opposite of love. It's not the antonym, but it's the antithesis. The people who hate me think about me. They're sitting up at night plotting my demise. The people who don't care about me at all, don't think about me at all, they're just wrapped up in themselves, they're self-absorbed. I don't get any of their attention. I don't live rent-free in their head or anything. That's worse. I'm at least glad you think about me sometimes. Even if it's bad, you still have to think about me. Selfishness is the opposite of Christianity. If anyone would come after me, let him... Oh, wow. You can't follow Jesus, you can't carry a cross, you can't get rid of self. Inherent in the Christian ethic is love your neighbor as your... If you can't get a balance of self, you think too highly of yourself or too low of yourself, you don't know how to treat other people healthily. You're outside the bell curve of normalcy. You're either codependent or you're a narcissist. You can't have that balance. And then if you go to mature as a Christian, it's not about how many appearances you make at a building. It's not how many mission trips you go on. It's not how big a check you write and drop in the shiny plate. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and control of the self. And people who can't control self can't have love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, patience, and gentleness. So the first thing he says is, don't you let anything you do be done out of selfishness. When I make a decision about what I'm going to do in interaction with my life, my congregation, my neighborhood, my friends, I got to ask myself, am I doing this for me or doing this for us? Or am I doing this for you because it's what you need? Your needs above mine. So don't do anything out of selfishness. Number two, don't do anything out of vain conceit. Vain conceit is the root of selfishness because I think more highly of me than I should think of anybody else. There are people who are self-made men worship their makers. We tend to get wrapped up in how smart we are, how big we are, how strong we are, how talented we are. And I get it. There's big, strong, smart, talented people in the world. But everything you've ever accomplished is on the back of a gift somebody gave you didn't deserve. My daughter, all 4 foot 10 inches of her, played Division I volleyball. They paid her $1,000 for every inch of height she had. She should have been a little taller, okay? And so we went for a drive. She'd get ready to leave home. I take her out and drive on the country road in Gurley, Alabama. I said, you're the only Division I athlete to ever come out of Madison County High School. I get that. Incredible. She's got her mother's eye-hand coordination, got my reflexes. Unbelievable. I've got a picture of her. Her toes are on the ground, her knees are on the ground, and her ponytail is on the ground backwards, dodging a ball going out of bounds. She's quick as a rattlesnake. Oh, man. I said, and I get it. You practiced hard. You showed up. You gave up some of your springs to play club ball. I get that. I said, but what did you do to deserve eyes that see a volleyball? What did you do to deserve to have legs that'll hold your weight up? What did you do to deserve to have muscles that fire as fast as your... Everything you've ever done in volleyball is done on the back of a gift somebody handed you. You didn't deserve. What did you do to deserve to be born in America? What did you do to deserve to be born in Southern America? I get it. We went to school, we studied hard, we worked hard, we built stuff with our hands. But what did you do to deserve to have hands that build stuff? Don't be vainly conceited. Don't get wrapped up in you don't know who I am. If you've ever said you don't know who I am, you don't know who you are. Okay? I'm somebody who's been given a gift. Now I can brag about what I've done with my gift maybe. But the bottom line of me thinking I'm somebody special or something, it's just not on the table. I know kids who were born and can't walk. I know people who are born and can't see. I know people who don't have my strength. I'm naturally strong because I got little short muscles. But do anything out of selfish ambition. Don't do anything out of vain conceit. Don't get wrapped up in how smart you are, how talented you are, how bright. Whatever it is you're doing, and I'm proud you're doing it on the back of a gift somebody gave you. So I don't do anything out of selfish ambition. I don't do anything out of vain conceit. But in lowliness of mind, as if esteem others as better than you. I'm just going to treat my wife as if she's the most important person on the planet. My number one responsibility on this planet is to God. And my number one responsibility to God is my wife. And next to her is my kid. And everybody else gets a number. And those numbers start with double digits, by the way. Okay, I skipped some numbers. They're my priority. And so I'm going to esteem others as if, treat you as if you're better than me. Now, what would happen if I just tried to treat you as the most important person? Tim Orson, a guy who'd been a minister friend of mine, we both moved to Huntsville in '86. We've worked at 2 different churches together. We're good friends. He says the most ridiculous situation that happens in the human condition is a wreck at a 4-way stop. You know how you have a wreck at a 4-way stop? Somebody says, hey, my schedule's more important than yours. And they run through that. I don't know what we're going to do with roundabouts. It may ruin his. That's a thing from the devil. Anyway, but the idea of, you know what, if I just, I'm driving in the crazy traffic and this guy cuts me off, well, maybe he's got to be somewhere more important than I got to be. Maybe his kid's sick, maybe his wife's in labor. Maybe she just called and said, you better not be late. I don't know. But why is my schedule more important than his? Don't do anything out of selfish ambition, don't do anything out of vain conceit, but in lowliness of mind, change the way I see myself and change the way I see you. That's submission, service, and forgiveness. And you can't be anybody in the kingdom without submission, service, and forgiveness. And if I change the way I see me, it'll change the way I see you. And so, in lowliness of mind, I'm going to esteem you as better than me. And then instead of looking out just for my interest, instead of just self, I'm going to look at us, the we-ness. I'm going to look out for the interest of others. And you apply that to home, you apply that to community. Hey, you take this into a sports team and you teach it, and you change that team. I don't know if this is a sore spot here or not, but Coach Saban is not coaching anymore because of that. He said, we lost a national championship. And somebody came up to me and said, hey, can you guarantee me playing time next year? Not, hey, coach, what can I do to help the team? How did I fail the team? Wow. Watch it in churches. Watch it in elderships. Watch it on sports teams. Watch it in companies. Watch it in families when people compete with who's the best. Now, if we stop right there, that's about as succinct as Paul ever gets. Paul will chase a rabbit every now and then. But like all good Church of Christ preachers, Paul's going to illustrate his lesson. Don't do anything out of selfish ambition. Don't do anything out of vain conceit. In lowliness of mind, let each of you esteem others better than themselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also for the interests of others. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Now listen to the description of Christ, who, being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God. You've got, okay, here's my sermon illustration. Selfish ambition, vain conceit, lowliness of mind, and looking at others' interests rather than mine. Well, here's who you imitate. You imitate Christ. And Paul's illustrating his lesson by telling the story of Jesus. But when Paul illustrates the story of Jesus, he does not start in the manger. He starts in the throne room. You've got this place in heaven, and you've got God and Jesus, and they're the same. And it's not robbery. It's not inappropriate. It's not a faux pas for you to say Jesus is God and God is Jesus. I don't know how that works. Okay, I've got a finite understanding. I know in Greek, you get in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and you've got the definite article in the Greek word for God. You got in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, ho theos. And then the Word was with God. And it's technically theon, but we'll just use that. And the definite article is absent, so it's not a proper name. This is like buck with a capital B, but buck with a little b. One's a person, one's a deer. What is this? In the beginning was the Word was with God, his name, and then the word was God. I don't like that. Maybe the word deity fits there. Maybe the word God stuff is better. God's substance. And I don't know that I can explain the Trinity. I'm not smart enough. What helps me, not 100% accurate, but helps me, is if you take this bottle of Aquafina water here. What's the chemical formula for water? H2O. So I'm going to reduce the temperature of that to 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. It becomes a hydroxide. We call it ice. What's the chemical formula for ice? Oh, H2O. If I take that water and I warm it up and it becomes a water vapor, what's the chemical formula for water vapor? Oh my. 100% water, 100% water, 100% water. 3 distinct different manifestations. Now that's not modalism. Modalism says that God can only exist in one of those forms one at a time. I've been in the woods and seen a creek froze over and water running under it and mist coming off the top of it. I've seen all 3 at the same time in the same place. There's a thing in chemistry called the triple point, and they exist. You can't tell the difference in them. God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. 100% God, 100% God, 100% God. But different in some way. Jesus was God. Let this mind be in you which was also in Christ, who, being in the very form of God, did not consider it robbery. It's not inappropriate to call this guy God. That's what got him crucified. I am the Son of God. When they come to arrest him in the garden, another one of those things where the italics is added. Who are you looking for? Looking for Jesus of Nazareth. Your Bible says, I am he. What Jesus said was, I am. They backed up and fell to the ground because he was God. And had no trouble claiming it. Let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus, who being in the very form of God, did not consider it robbery. It wasn't inappropriate to be equal with God. But he made himself of no reputation and came as a bondservant and in the likeness of men. And being found in the appearance of a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death on the cross. Now, I don't want to be inappropriate, and I don't want to be cavalier, and I don't want to be irreligious. But just think about how Jesus could have manifested. Now, let's suppose that we're going to go take over someplace, right? We're going to go to some little island in the Caribbean and we're going to make it ours. As Americans, we'd use one of 3 strategies. Number 1, we'd use popularity. Facebook, Instagram, we'd flood the media. We're the most popular people in the world. You'll like us, right? That's how they just won the election. They took over social media and podcasts, right? Could Jesus have been a rock star? Could he have rock star status? Hey, performing miracles in the Coliseum tonight and tonight only, Jesus. Standing room only, every town, every venue, every place. But how many times did Jesus avoid that? Hey, don't tell anybody what I've done to you. Hey, the crowd is here, let's go to the other side of the lake. I'm going to go to the wilderness and pray. Jesus didn't come to be a rock star. Now, as Americans, if we wanted to take over something, we're not going to do it with popularity, we throw money at it. We just spend money on it, right? I mean, that's how we solve problems. Could Jesus have been an entrepreneur? Think about being in the restaurant business with Jesus. I'd name my bring a biscuit, feed everybody. You know? Sir, what are you drinking? What do you got? We just take the bottle back to the back and it comes back. What do you need? You know, if you can turn stones to bread, you can turn stones to gold. But Jesus said, foxes have holes. Birds have nests. The Son of Man has no place to lay his head. He didn't come to be a rock star. And he didn't come to be an entrepreneur. Well, if that doesn't work for Americans, we'd shock and awe. We just put the military on it. Right? Hey, Peter, put your sword away. My Father will put at my disposal 12 legions of angels. Sing the song 10,000 Angels? That is 62,000 angels off. A Roman legion had 6,000 men. 12 legions of angels is 72,000 angels. One angel, 2 Kings 19, kills 185,000 men. And we're not told he had a sword. Just the angel of the Lord went and smote. So if you take 72,000 and you multiply it by 185,000 per, you understand what we're talking about here? An engineer in Miami, Florida decided to bring that to my attention. He goes, you said that thing about the angels, you piqued my curiosity. He had a visitor's card that looked like Wile E. Coyote had a hold of it. It was scratched and drawn on. He goes, given a 10-hour day and a kill ratio of 185,000, you destroy today's population, the world population, 3.39 hours. Okay, that's faster than the zombie apocalypse. Just Legion 1, take the Romans. Legion 2, take the Jews. And there's not enough cosmic dust left to put in a spoon. He told Peter, hey, my kingdom is of this world, my servants would find it, put your sword away. He didn't come to be a rock star, an entrepreneur, or a soldier. He came to be a servant. This is interesting. Greek is not super technical. It's a fool's errand to teach a doctrine based on a specific translation of a Greek word. I'm the apostle Jesus loved. Sometimes it's agapao, sometimes it's phileo. It's not technically specific. John uses those Greek words interchangeably. So you hear that sermon in John 21, Peter, do you love me? Yeah, I love you. Those Greek words don't mean anything different to John. And by the way, when Peter and Jesus are walking on the beach and they're talking, do you love me? It's in Aramaic. It wasn't even in Greek. So those Greek words don't really mean anything. But there's a Greek significance here. There's a nuance. Not a technical distinction, but a nuance. And the word he uses here is doulos, not diakonoi. It's a bond servant. And a bond servant was the least educated, youngest servant you could bring to your house. And his job was to wash people's feet. And on the slave market in the first century, he cost 30 pieces of silver. You want to change the dynamic of your house, your neighborhood, your marriage, your friendships, or your congregation. This is the example of Jesus. He was God. He became a foot-washing servant with a 30 silver pieces price tag because he wasn't conceited and he wasn't selfish. If my master is a servant, the greatest thing I can ever hope to be is a servant. A disciple is not above his master, but a disciple who's perfectly trained will be like his master. Luke chapter 6, verse 40. And when I do that, this happens. Because this and this are the same thing. Love is the intention, and if necessary, personally costly investments the good of another. Not expecting reciprocity, and the other person doesn't have to deserve it. That's the gospel. God did something for us that we don't deserve, and there's no upside in it for God except murdering his son. And it was personally costly. It was an intention. Before the world was formed, God made up his mind to send Jesus. Before he created the first Adam, A-T-O-M or A-D-A-M, God said, when these people live up to their potential to fail, I'm going to fix it. And what happens when my wife lives up to her potential to fail? What should she do when I live up to my potential to fail? What should I do when the people I go to church with live up to their potential to fail? Don't do anything selfish. Don't do anything conceited. A cognitive shift that you're more important than me. And I'm going to follow the example of Jesus and not look out just for my agenda, but for our agenda. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the example of Christ. Thank you that he exemplifies how we should treat others when they're imperfect. Father, help us in our marriages to not be self-centered, but to be us-centered and to be you-centered. Father, bless us this weekend. Bring us back tomorrow as we worship. Bless the study that we've done, and bless the study that we will do. Thank you for the gifts that you give all of us. Thank you for the fellowship of the church that is worldwide. In Jesus' name, amen. It's all yours, sir.
This next? I'm done already. I want to take a
You're
picture.
done already?
I want to take a picture.
her.